have a problem with is hypocrisy. And when someone kind of comes to try to scold publicly so that he could get Billy, whoever his name is, that he pays to attack, especially other opponents, they come up here to scold. They should let Billy know if they are so bad, why are they asking for their support? Of course, the support was quietly to get all the votes and people that I know in district.
Hi, ladies. We heard at this news conference this morning words and phrases like victim and holding politicians accountable, also removing politicians from office. All of this now fallout from that ruling against Miami City Commissioner Joe Carollo, recently found liable for violating the First Amendment rights of two Little Havana businessmen.
This guy here is not a punching bag.
Welcome to Why Are We Like This, the podcast that treats Florida like the active crime scene it is. I'm your host, David Quinones. I'm joined by my co-host, as always. He's walking here, Tomas Kennedy. Hello, Tomas.
Hey, I'm trying to walk here.
How are you settling in the city that never sleeps but needs to learn how to swim, apparently?
You know, it's funny because last time I moved to New York, 2 weeks after I moved, we got hit with Hurricane Sandy. And now 2 weeks after I moved, we're getting hit by historic flooding yet again. So I'm just bringing the bad vibes to a new city. And maybe it's a little bit of revenge for all the New Yorkers that moved to Miami and ruined our city. But we, Florida, are threatening to ruin the rest of the country. So maybe, you know, it's a give and take.
And of course, if I am joined by Tomas, that means I'm also joined by Gerald Doherty, my other co-host. Hello, Gerald.
Hello, how are you? I'm on higher ground. Rockland is kind of like the Lord of the Rings section of downstate New York, so I'm pretty firmly entrenched in the mountains.
Good to know you're safe.
Yeah, as long as the cave that I sleep in doesn't slope down and crush me with the rain, I'll be okay.
Boys, it's been a year. It's been 1 year since our first podcast, since our first episode came out. We are celebrating one full turn of the calendar, and we're doing it by welcoming back our first three-time guest. You already know him from his acclaimed documentaries like Cocaine Cowboy, Square Grouper, The U. You know him from his equally acclaimed docuseries, God Forbid, The Sex Scandal That Brought Down a Dynasty. You might know him from his podcast, Because Miami, which is released every Friday. You can find it over there on the Levitard and Friends feed, anywhere podcasts can be found, or from his incandescent Twitter feed, at Billy Corbin. Billy Corbin, welcome back to Why Are We Like This? It's good to have you back, man. Welcome back.
It's great to be here, David. Thank you.
So I wanted to start off with a couple of news and notes first as we jump in to today's episode. I want to get down to a main topic that is sort of this interconnected web of corruption. Honestly, just all of these different tendrils of, you know, and kind of use Tomas's recent ethics complaint against our mayor as a foot in the door to talk about that. But there's a couple of things on the transom that we got to jump through. First of all, starting with speaking of exactly that kind of corruption, Billy getting called out a few days ago. I think it was 5 days ago on the dais by Paragon of Integrity, Joe Carollo, up on the Billy. Were you surprised to hear your name, first of all, mangled by our rapidly sundowning commissioner, and then just, I don't know, how do you take these things? Because I think about like Vince Lago down here in the Gables. This is not the first time you get called out by these guys. Like, how do you take it when these guys like kind of call you out and bring your name up?
Well, it's certainly not surprising. It's almost disappointing when they don't, because Joe Carollo especially is kind of notorious for having thick skin and for being like this mafioso kind of figure. He actually fancies himself that. If you go in his office inside City Hall, there's this very long vertical poster of the movie The Godfather with his face photoshopped onto the body of Don Corleone.
You know, the theme song when they sworn in the new police chief.
Yeah, it was on his Spotify Wrapped, I'm pretty sure, the Godfather theme song.
Well, more importantly, it was when they fired the police chief, Art Acevedo, who called the three commissioners out for corruption and referred to them as a mafia. And then they fired him for that, for doing his job as a law enforcement officer and saying, hey, I was brought in here, introduced, handpicked choice to be police chief by Mayor Francis Suarez, who declared me the Michael Jordan and Tom Brady of police chiefs. 6 months later, I say, hey, these guys are corrupt in the city commission. He actually sends an 8-page bombshell memo to federal law enforcement, which he has to do because the city commission passed a shady ordinance that does not allow the city of Miami Police Department to either investigate or arrest elected officials within the city. So they have to refer by city ordinance any of those cases to the FBI or the Florida Department of Law Enforcement. And he did that and got fired for it. And then, as Tomas said, that same day in a back room of City Hall, they swore in the new police chief, Manny Morales, while Joe on his cell phone played the Godfather theme music. So that's what we're dealing with there. So it's all about threats and intimidation. And I think the best way to handle bullies is to metaphorically, shove them down in the schoolyard in front of everybody, and then they lay back for a while. And that's Joe's style. If I show up to a commission meeting and during public comment and call them out, he'll hem and haw and scream and cry, and then he'll shut up about me for a while. But you have to remember, at some point last year, Joe actually from the dais threatened me. He said, and that was not the first time, but he said, if little Billy Corbin lived in the city of Miami, I would send code enforcement to his house, which, by the way, is a confession of a crime that he was about to go on trial for at the time, and as we now know, lost, and now was ordered by a federal civil jury to pay $63 million.
You should hope that he sends city agencies against you, because then you can sue him and get him to pay you tens of millions of dollars.
Listen, if I was stupid enough to live in the city, that might be a problem. But that's the thing here is that you have to be a lunatic. Tomas Kennedy fled. He literally fled for higher ground.
I'm part of the exilio now.
Geographically and yeah.
But that's a good, listen, I don't mean, people aren't, let me qualify that. People aren't stupid for living in the city of Miami. I think they just don't know better. I say, as this mass influx of New Yorkers and Silicon Valleyers and everybody had come to Miami over the last several years, I made a very simple declaration that if you are thinking about moving your home, your family, your business, buying property, opening a business, investing in building something in the city of Miami, I would encourage you to watch one city commission meeting online. And I guarantee you that will immediately dispel you of any desire you have to ever do business. You will be desperately in search of a place to move your family and business, like a more stable political regime, like in Caracas, maybe.
Well, Billy, I think you're about to be eating your words a little bit there, because when you think of of the most integrity that you could possibly have, particularly in your podcast appears on what can best be described as a sports podcast network, and when you think of the most integrity of any sports body out there, you got to be thinking of FIFA, right?
I always am.
Yeah,
I always am.
And this from CBS News. FIFA does not agree with you, Billy. FIFA is moving more than 100 jobs from its Swiss headquarters to South Florida, where a growing workforce is already working on organizing the 2026 World Cup. FIFA informed staff on Tuesday that its entire legal department and audit, compliance, and risk management teams will move from Zurich to Coral Gables, a city whose status on the global soccer map is growing after Lionel Messi's move to play in MLS for Inter Miami. Lost on the national reporter from CBS is that Lionel
City
Messi is playing a solid hour and a half away from Coral Gables in traffic.
Technically not City of Miami though, but it has its own share of corruption. They have what I would describe as adult onset fetal alcohol syndrome. I think we've described it ourselves in the past. Vince Lago is adult onset fetal alcohol syndrome, Francis Suarez. So they have their own little own tyrant, Francis Suarez clone in that city.
And to be clear, it is you refer to it as a web, David. It is an incestuous cesspool of corruption, and almost all of it in some way is interconnected. There is not a degree of separation from most of these of these scandals, and in fact, the arrest of the city commissioner Alex Diaz-Laportilla will impact people in Coral Gables, in City of Miami, in Miami-Dade County government. That's he's just the first domino to fall. But Vince Lago is like, it's like if Francis Suarez, like, like a mogwai, and you got him wet. And a little hairball.
One of the little poppers. Yeah.
And then you fed him after midnight. That's like Vince Lago. He's like, how like, the Mogwais multiplying, they're also like photocopies of photocopies. They're like evil. They're a little dumber, they're a little sloppier, like, a little messier. And how appropriate is it that a man named Messi moved to this town? But like that's Vince Lago. He's like a bad photocopy of a photocopy of Francis Suarez, but no less corrupt. I mean, here's another mayor who is a registered real estate hustler, like by trade. He actually lists in his official bio, his main source of income is real estate and construction. And what has happened in Coral Gables over the last several years? A real estate and construction boom has happened. And while he has insisted that he does no business in the city, or he insisted that years ago, now he has gleefully appeared at ribbon cutting ceremonies talking about his actual professional and personal involvement in these projects. He's also known to, like, when you want to build something or open something in the city, he's known to suggest very strongly to you what people you want to hire to get that done. He's been expelled, if you will, or dropped out or resigned or whatever from a real estate brokerage where he had his license filed with the mayor of Hialeah, the mayor of Hialeah's stepson, who was also a former Hialeah councilman, his chief of staff as well, and he owns property with Francis Suarez's cousin in Coral Gables. I mean, it just
well, yeah. You mentioned some of the affected parties in this, and a group that you left out in terms of those stakeholders are the poor servers at Morton Steakhouse, who are not going to get to see some of get a front row seat to some of the drama that they've gotten to witness. And for those who don't know what we're talking about, I don't know, Billy, you know the ins and outs of that better than I do. But
do you know, like listen to it. We sound insane.
I know. This sounds like an unhinged group of morons talking about the most weird inside shit. But this is the life that we're living in, except for Tomas, who pieced out and was like, I've had enough of this.
But like the funny thing is that all we're doing is actually reciting facts, but it's so crazy. It sounds so crazy.
Wait until they find the gold bars. And by the way, I do want to say something. We'll get into the ethics complaint stuff later, but all this stuff that Billy was talking about Vince Lago is insanely unethical and illegal under state law. And he was actually at that Formula One event that is the center of my ethics complaint against Francis Suarez. I doubt that he paid for his own $14,000 or whatever it is via whatever ticket Vince got specifically. I doubt he paid that for himself. And I want to say this to the viewer. You can file a notarized ethics complaint at any time. And don't be afraid to do so, because sometimes the Ethics Commission will take it upon themselves to investigate it. And just at the risk of sounding corny, just remember that age-old story, David only needed a slingshot to take on Goliath. So go after these fuckers, harass them, take on them, file that ethics complaint. Somebody, listener, file an ethics complaint on Vince Lago, because he is just as vulnerable as Francis is.
We should print up actual copies of it and just hang it at Hillstones and Tap 42 and all these haunts of these people.
I have to tell you, this was the cheese made this rumor, which was not true, by the way, but it was a real rumor. A real rumor such that a couple of people from the press did descend on City Hall in Coral Gables during last week's commission meeting. There was a rumor that Vince Lago was going to get arrested. It was not true. It did not happen. I didn't believe it when I heard it, but it was like an actionable rumor. People were like, have you heard about this? Like, should we go to City Hall? And the press, I don't know exactly who, but I know there was some press that wound up showing up in possible anticipation of this, because of course, 3 weeks ago or so, 2-3 weeks ago, a city commissioner in Miami, we all woke up first thing in the Thursday morning to the cheese, the coconut telegraph, as Jimmy Buffett would
Billy
say.
and I were like,
Yeah, everybody's like,
OMG.
everybody's like, yo, I hear the FDLE is going to be, knocking down the door on City Hall to grab DLP. And sure as shit, man, the FDLE was going in the front door. Alex Diaz-Portillo was literally walking out the back door and took off, and like OJ in the white Ford Bronco. And he basically, they made a call and said, where does he'll surrender, but he is not down for the perp walk, because the media had already assembled in front of City Hall to be able to get that shot of him in handcuffs coming out of the building.
We want to get to that. But one thing I wanted to bring up really quickly as we wrap up our news and notes, Tomas, Gerald, I know the two of you got together to watch the debate the other night, the most pointless debate in the history of pointless debates.
Until the next most pointless debate.
in Miami.
Yep.
I don't know. I wanted to get you to Gerald. Maybe you could give me your impression of it as a professional debate watcher. I just wanted to touch on, I don't want to, this is such a rabbit hole, I didn't want to go down it, but Tomas, Billy, you're both journalists. You've both worked in the capacity with, pulling records and things like that from the Florida Department, the biased activist journalist. Working with the Florida Department of Law Enforcement, the one thing that jumped out to me as also a former journalist is the terrible data and how you can stand on just this bullshit data and make up anything that you want about, and specifically I'm talking about Ron DeSantis and his contention that, Florida is this crime-free haven and California is this desiccated wasteland of rape and murder. I don't know. What stood out to you, Jer?
So we talked about this as it was happening. He said he talked to, he had a conversation with a woman who was describing how terrible the crime is. And my conjecture is that he's not trying to convince us that California is ridden with crime. He's trying to convince us that he has normal conversations with everyday people about the issues that they're facing. I'm sorry, I've seen this guy talk to people. I don't think that conversation happened.
My girlfriend pointed out something important, or was it you? One of you two pointed out something very illuminating, that he actually said that several times throughout the debate. He said, I had a conversation with a woman. He obviously focus group tested that talking to women is more popular, polls higher. So he's just making up these conversations with various women that as he's had in New Hampshire and Iowa. It's all bullshit. These things never happen. It's all scripted. They wrote that for him.
One of the focus points from the first debate is that women did not like how masturbatory Vivek's performance was by constantly I'm repeating what happened. He boasted a lot about himself and made himself out to be this savior that no one's ever heard of before he ran for president. And the demographic that really did not like that was women, because they meet guys like that every day and know to clutch their purse and drive 5 miles per hour faster if they ever come across such a person. And so, to Tomas's point, I think that they probably deduced that women voters are more up for grabs, and he made sure to say how many conversations he's been having with women in his travels across the country. Conversations that did not happen, by the way.
For sure. Unlike the 3-time abortion survivor woman that he said that he had a conversation with last time. I think some of this stuff is a little bit of a cultural remnant, and I think, one of the culprits is on this call with us right now, because I think that there are some people who think about Florida in the context of, it used to be Paradise Lost. It used to be, people getting gunned down in front of Dadeland Mall, and people, if they're under the age of 50 and they have any cultural memory of that, it's probably because they watch Cocaine Cowboys. Let's be honest, that's the enduring image from one of the enduring images from that movie. Billy, do you think that people think Florida, now it's fine. Now America writ large, the US writ large, people think, Florida, now it doesn't have crime anymore. Something like that. Is anybody buying that kind of bullshit from FDLE and from DeSantis?
No, I don't think so. You go around the country, I think there are people with misimpressions of it, but I think by and large people don't believe that to be true. But I think there is a certain movement or a certain group in this country. I mean, let's be real about it. They want to hear lies. They want, I mean, listen, we're here in an echo chamber right now, but I think that we could handle the truth. I think we believe that Bob Menendez should be arrested and should resign.
Lock him up.
Yeah, should resign from the Senate. Absolutely. I don't think there'd be anybody who would debate that.
Go in jail, let alone resign.
Yeah. I mean, what did he say? Oh, I'm not corrupt. I'm just Cuban. We just hide cash everywhere in our house. Yeah. What are you talking? What a crazy.
We had a back and forth about this on our chat, on our show chat, and I did mention that, like, it is true that most of the Cuban men I know over the age of 65 do have piles of cash. Like, that is actually a true thing. They have piles of cash in their house.
Yeah, but it shouldn't be stolen.
Yeah.
I've gotten cash.
But it's not stolen cash. Yeah. It's not ill-gotten proceeds of crime.
And bars of gold he got from Egyptians? Like,
yeah. They didn't get the cash by being, like, Egyptian intelligent assets. Like, what?
It's a buelo AF to be talking with Egyptian military figures and asking how much gold bars are worth in cash.
They didn't get their cash by, like, rigging the, like, halal certification process for all of the United States.
I don't want to avoid the question entirely, though. But there is a certain segment of the population that, like, wants to be gaslighted. You know, I think of
tell me what I want to hear.
I think of Steve Martin as the dentist in Little Shop of Horrors. I think that's the level of gas. They want the gas. You know, it makes them happy. It makes them. But this is a scary thing about it. And I was just talking about it with a friend today that there are people. I mean, people work in this country, and particularly in this community. I mean, they work 3, 4, 5 jobs just to afford their rent. They have to make decisions about clothing and feeding their children or going to the doctor. Like, these are, and this is like a significant percentage of our friends and neighbors. They work on their feet. They work outside. They work with their hands. They work in the heat, or they work in a service industry dealing with all of us miserable people, really hard jobs, and they still can barely afford to live here. And some of those people will donate $5, $10, $15, $20, $50, $100. Think about how many hours it takes to earn that money. Will donate that to a man who shits on a gold toilet because they think that man cares about them, is looking out for them, and is going to save the country. Like, and by the way, I'm not making fun of these people at all. I'm saying that this is like, it's a drug, it's a sickness, there's something going on here where, like, can you imagine? And by the way, that man is using your money to pay for his legal defense fund. A man who is trying to defend crimes he committed while he was the president of the United States with your money that you make working. And same people who want, I want low taxes. Do you know how many months out of the year I work for the government? How many months out of the year do you work to pay Donald Trump's criminal defense? But it's the same people who won't believe that Florida is crime ridden.
And Jumbo Jet, by the way.
Yeah. I mean, there's an entire, I almost called it a cottage industry, but that would be downplaying it. This is an enormous industry. The Donald Trump handout industry over the last 7 years has turned into the we talked about, what was the name of his, Gerald, the name of his 6'5" weird Swedish digital manager that lost his shit in Fort Lauderdale and got arrested. Remember, who was that guy? The big guy. He came up with, we talked about this in the past. His name escapes me right now, but they did come up with this novel approach of just bombarding boomers' inboxes with asks for money, and it's ridiculous. If you ever look in your spam folder, you'll see all this stuff. It's the amount of money that it's just extracting as a project out of old folks. It's crazy.
But to me, also, like, rich people gonna rich people, special interest gonna special interest. You know, they're looking out for low taxes or their best interest or corporate welfare or whatever. I get it. Yeah. It's the small donors like that really it upsets me. It disturbs me, I should say, like, in a way, because, like, this guy does not give a shit about you. This guy would not piss on you in a fire. This guy has thumbed his nose, looked down on you, and metaphorically spit on people like that. The man's never paid a contractor, never paid a construction worker, never paid for the people who built, who literally
pays his lawyers.
Dude, remember the reports from when he was watching the January 6th riots on TV, and he was like, why are they dressed like that? Oh, they don't look so sharp. They should be dressed better. It's like he literally thinks his supporters are garbage.
He hates
Yeah.
them. Yeah.
I think you can break them into two categories. Like there was a not insignificant portion of QAnon literature that thought like there was going to be an inside deal to forgive all medical debt until 9/11 happened, and that scurried the deal. There was someone who was interviewed at a Trump event who said that she's voting for Trump because she has medical debt and thinks that he has a secret plan to wipe it all away, that only he can use his business genius smarts to do.
Right.
I think that
the Iraqi dinar, there was a huge
The
section
Iraqi
of
dinar.
his
This is from the
supporters
dinar.
who bought
Yes.
Iraqi currency, thinking that he was going to peg it to the dollar. They were buying it while he was undervalued, and he was going to magically shut up in value
Yeah.
when Donald Trump was going to push the Iraqi dinar evaluation button and make it worth the same as the US dollar. This is a real scheme
Yeah.
that they thought, and they lost all their savings, and they're
Yeah.
still waiting for the Iraqi dinar to be overvalued by, their messiah, Donald Trump. It's crazy.
It's not funny.
I know.
It's
I
sad.
I get the sense if you're in a bad spot, the idea that there's a powerful rich person who likes you. I kind of get that. I think probably a lot of world religions probably formed around that exact feeling. There's another type of person who I can't break bread with, and that is the people who like Donald Trump because they think he's going to rain divine justice down upon all my enemies, i.e. social minorities and, what have you. Like, that's the person that I think gulag for you.
I with you there. I've been saying this for a lot of years, but I think the sad, sick reality of the Trump story and a lot of the Republican story, unfortunately, in this era, is that for all the racism, demagoguery, depriving Americans of their rights, this is all just a heist movie. Like, Trump doesn't really care. He doesn't really care about any of the Islamophobia and the misogyny and he might feel that, but he doesn't care about it. This is all red meat to shake them, to grab them by the ankles and shake the money out of their pockets. Like, that's the sick thing. This is all just a money play. But there are real victims of that corruption. Americans are suffering. Real people, including some of his voters and constituents, a lot of them are suffering as a result of that.
I think we've got another year and a half, another year to talk about this particular subject, and probably another 4 years after that.
I want to say now that the 2024 election cycle is going to make 2020 look like 2012. I don't mean like
non-controversial. Yeah.
Incidentally, I'm not picking on 2012 in particular. I'm just saying like uneventful, like in the pantheon and in our memory banks. Like 2020 will forever be like a collective trauma, like 9/11. Like, we'll always remember where we were on January 6, 2021. Like there will be, but 2024 is going to be off the chain. Like 2024, I mean, I don't think there's any stopping Trump from getting this nomination, despite the fact that he's going to be on trial. He is going to be on appeal. He might be convicted. I think you could forget Sleepy Joe in the basement. We could have our first president in exile. Former president in exile running for president as the presumptive major party candidate in Moscow, in Saudi Arabia, and he'll get the nomination, I think.
And I know you disagree, but he could very well win.
He could. A lot of people are watching this race as, am I going to vote for the guy who's might die in office versus the guy who might die in prison? And they think prison guy might have a little more juice in him, like that, like more blood in his veins. Like, that is what they're seeing.
From a GOP candidate who seems immune to almost any consequences in life, to a former GOP presidential candidate who looks like he might be hearing the footsteps of a little bit of consequences. I want to read this from the Miami Herald to ease us into our main topic for the day.
Oh, yes.
Miami Mayor Suarez officially under state ethics investigation for World Cup F1 tickets. The Florida Commission on Ethics has officially opened an investigation into Miami Mayor Francis Suarez following a complaint regarding his acceptance of expensive tickets to sporting events like the Miami Formula One Grand Prix and the 2022 World Cup in Qatar. The investigation is based on a complaint made by local activist Tomas Kennedy, not so local anymore though, which raises questions about who paid for the very. Come on, who is this, Sarah? Come on, Sarah, do some fact checking.
I'm still coming and going, baby.
International activist, international man of mystery.
Mr. Worldwide, Tomas.
I haven't abandoned y'all.
And whether Suarez complied with Florida ethics laws requiring the mayor to disclose the source of all gifts, including complimentary access, valued over $100. The laws also prohibit elected officials from accepting such gifts from city vendors, lobbyists, and or their employers. T, I want to hand it off to you, but I also want to mention the byline on this is from Sarah Blasky, and she got a co-byline there from Tess Risky. But I also want to mention that Sarah, who's a friend of the show, has been trying to get answers to this, and basically initiated one of the biggest journalistic farces in recent memory, where she was kind of shoved aside, physically molested, pushed away by the mayor, by his people, manhandled. Mayor caught some shit for that, and then proceeded to have like a Potemkin style group of friendly journalists come in and lob some softballs at him, and that just pissed me off a lot. But T, I don't want to steal your thunder.
Except for Glenna Milberg, let's give her credit.
Glenna, much credit to what is Glenna? CBS, right, or WSVN?
ABC.
Yeah. ABC, yeah. ABC's Glenna Milberg, who did hold his feet to the fire far more than any of the other folks. Tomas, how did it come to this?
I mean, look, Billy has been the chief tormentor of Francis Suarez, and has been able to track his descent into corruption and his degradation of public office in the city of Miami, which is, wow, what a task, right? To further degrade public office in the city of Miami. But, it's funny because, Billy, you and I have talked about this. This guy was giving, like the silk glove treatment by the press pretty much until the cryptocurrency collapse of last year, right? While he was peddling the shit coins that ultimately collapsed, lost investors millions of dollars, were suspended from trading. At the same time, right? That was like a lot of like the focus of his rise and fall. But during that same time, this guy, who had a net worth of negative 99,000, negative 100,000, his wealth since he got elected into office, like a decade ago, ballooned up to $12 million. And that's because he has dozens, or at least over a dozen, side gigs at crypto firms, consultancy firms, a law firm where he doesn't even really practice law. His role there is basically to bring in clients for the firm, and basically grease whatever they need to do in the city. And Sarah basically found the smoking gun that accelerated his ongoing downfall, which was $10,000 a month payments totaling $170,000 from a developer named Rishi Kapoor, who basically had luxury development projects fast-tracked at the city of Miami, basically emailing the zoning director to grease, the proceedings for him, then later emailing the city of Miami mayor's office, Francis Suarez's office, thanking him for his role in this, greasing of the process. Basically, hiring the mayor to deal against us, the citizens who already pay him, $120,000 a year, Billy, to get the best deal for us. He's not getting the best deal for us. He's getting the best deal for his clients. That's a bribe, right? They are hiring him and bribing him, and it was all undisclosed. So that is I think the most egregious thing that is on him right now. But on top of that, what my ethics complaint centers around is these high dollar, expensive gifts that the mayor has flaunted in the face of the residents, and continues to flaunt as he goes on these, softball interviews, and says that the residents expected him to attend these events to represent the city of Miami. well, if you do that, do it in your official capacity, make some remarks and leave. But that's not what he did. Sarah actually got the mayor's calendar where he had his time at the Grand Prix, at the Formula One event, blocked off as personal time. Right. He went there for all 3 days, despite his efforts to say that he was only there one day, right? He went there to wine and dine and hang out with his wife. And the $14,000 tickets, 2 of them, which he got, totaling almost $30,000, were from Ken Griffin, the CEO of Citadel, who has 3 luxury development projects before the city of Miami. He went to the World Cup in Qatar. We still don't know who paid for that, and was in a box with David Beckham, who is perhaps city of Miami's most famous registered lobbyist, right? Yeah. And again, we don't know who paid for that. And he doesn't disclose these things. He's not honest with the public. And again, the problem here is that he's not being honest. He's not disclosing this to the public, and he's getting these gifts from entities who are lobbying and have interest and projects before the city of Miami. So that prevents him from negotiating a good deal on behalf of us, the residents, which he is supposed to do, right? And I want to make this very clear. This is not just an ethics thing, right? Of course it is, but state law is very, very clear. Any gift totaling $100 or more from a lobbyist or one of their employees is illegal if not refunded within 90 days, which that 90-day period for all of these gifts that I have outlined has expired. And despite the mayor's first claiming that he paid for the tickets himself, then when pressed saying, no, well, actually I reimbursed it, right? He has shown no proof of either payment or reimbursement within the allowed time of these high dollar gifts. So that is the basis of the complaint that I have filed before the Florida Ethics Commission.
This isn't the first complaint that you filed, Tomas, because I noticed that that Sarah mentioned in her story that you on the county level filed a complaint as well. And I was surprised to learn that, I think you and I have talked about this before, but it kind of didn't hit me until I was reading that, like you basically have to say, okay, from the story, it says here, Kennedy filed the same complaint with the County Ethics Commission. Just so people understand, down here in South Florida, the difference between the city and county is exponential. Like the city is really only about 400,000 people. The county is a huge metropolitan area of nearly 3 million people that contains
substantial bigger budget.
Substantially bigger budget. 34 municipalities are contained within our county. The city of Miami, including the city of Miami, which is one of them, the largest one. And it says that your county ethics commission complaint was dismissed on September 15th due to a clause in the county code requiring that the complainant have substantial personal knowledge of the alleged violation. This is basically saying that like the responsibility is on the complainant to be like a whistleblower, but like you would have to be so inside. Like how would you like that struck me as bullshit too.
And look, and I want to kick it over to Billy in a little bit to describe our experience, because he took time off his day to support the complaint and come with me that day to defend what we were trying to do. I will say the ethics committee in Miami-Dade did take a role in the indictment and arrest of Alex Diaz-La Portilla. So I don't want to kick him too much, but this clause of personal knowledge is ridiculous, right? Yeah. You have to it means that I would have had to basically been an employee of Ken Griffin that took part in paying for these tickets, or that I would have been a Francis Suarez employee that took part in the transaction somehow, or a City of Miami employee that took part in this transaction somehow. The burden of personal knowledge is ridiculous, and it's definitely designed to prevent Miami-Dade residents from using this tool for accountability of public officials. The Florida Ethics Board does not have this ridiculous requirement, but they do have to prove legal sufficiency, right? Look, I think we can all agree here. We don't want the state ethics board or the Miami-Dade Ethics Board or any ethics board to be used for frivolous purposes, right? Or partisanship sniping. It took about a month or more for the Florida Ethics Board to finally open an investigation and assign an investigator into this, right? So the Florida Ethics Board still has stringent strict procedures on whether to move forward with an investigation or not. But the personal knowledge clause at the Miami-Dade County Ethics Board needs to be completely revamped. And Billy, I want to just get your take of that day when we were there. And can you actually, if you don't mind, talk about that ridiculous part of the meeting where they were just waiving the fees for the lobbyists? Can you just, because I was just, my jaw dropped. And I think the public deserves to know, because I don't think they go to these Parks and Rec style, government meetings, but I was just honestly shocked. I thought it was outrageous.
Yeah, this is a pretty fun, obscure, government meeting as described. I also want to say I appreciate Tomas's compliment at the top of his remarks here. I want to return the compliment because, without Tomas filing these complaints, there would be no investigation at the state about this. So, and a lot of people, and rightfully so in this community, are scared of their government, are scared of retribution, are scared of code enforcement coming to their house, or whatever it is that Joe Carollo was found liable for and ordered to pay $63 million for targeting business owners and trying to put them out of business and put their employees out of work for political retribution. That is a real fear in this community. So, Tomas has been, as we know, fearless. And while it's easy for the mayor to dismiss Tomas as a partisan activist, which is not, it's not inaccurate, but it's irrelevant. Because in this situation, you're dealing with a nonpartisan seat.
I will say, Billy,
that don't mean it ain't true.
Before I interrupt you, before you go into the anecdote of the Miami-Dade ethics meeting, I may be a partisan activist, but I'm also nonpartisan, because who is the person that we went after before Joe Carollo in the city of Miami? It was Ken Russell. We go after
a Democrat,
on both parties.
But this is my point. Republicans hate us and Democrats hate us. I wear both as a badge of honor. I'm not a partisan hack. I just try to stay consistent, and try not to be a hypocrite and apply the same rules to everybody. I think George Santos should resign. I think Bob Menendez should resign. I don't think, I apply the same rules to both of those criminals if you're a Democratic criminal or Republican criminal. But the truth about Ken Russell as a city commissioner and the truth about Francis Suarez as a city mayor is those are nonpartisan seats. I know that sounds foolish because, well, of course that he's a registered Republican, he's a registered Democrat. But my point is that they don't run that way. There's no RD by their name, on the ballot. So these are people who are supposed to be in a nonpartisan way representing the small segment of their community that their municipality covers. Unfortunately, that turns out to be not true of both registered Republicans and registered Democrats alike. So you just got to call balls and strikes as you see them and not look, where's his voter registration? Because they're not serving as Democrats or Republicans. There's no Democratic caucus on the city commission or Republican caucus on the Miami-Dade County Commission. Those are, again, and that's not an incidental fact, I don't think. Number one. Number two, the meeting was a hoot. I mean, they spent the same lawyer for the Miami-Dade County Ethics Commission who was basically declaring Tomas's complaint as recommending a dismissal based on what Glenna called a loophole. It really was on standing rather than looking at the merits of the actual complaint. While she was recommending that this very real complaint for which we all had personal knowledge through the Miami Herald, everybody who's read that article has personal knowledge, and there are images on social media posted by the mayor. Mr. Griffin's spokesperson told the Miami Herald that the mayor and his wife were in fact guests of Mr. Griffin before they realized that, that maybe that's not allowable. We need to deal with that. But that same lawyer for the Miami Ethics Commission was recommending that lobbyist after lobbyist after lobbyist who had filed paperwork late with the county should have their fines reduced by 90%. The argument was they should pay simply 10% of what the fines were. So lobbyist after lobbyist was getting a 90% discount from this lawyer. She turns around and says, Tomas's complaint isn't going anywhere.
And by the way, she would say this and she would literally be like, well, lobbyist, blah, 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 was notified of this and couldn't be here today. But on their behalf, I am recommending that their fee be reduced by 90%. So these lobbyists, it's not like when you and I get a parking ticket, right? We go to the court in hopes that the police officer won't show up, which a lot of times they don't, and it gets dismissed, right? Sometimes. These people don't even have to show up, these lobbyists. They have the ethics board lawyer that makes the recommendations acting on their behalf, and they can't even be bothered to show up to make their own case. I mean, this is ridiculous.
Because they don't have to. Tomas and I showed up to defend, his complaint and this ridiculous recommendation. But here's the thing, and Tomas is right. The criminal charges, 13 of them, and arrest of Miami Commissioner Alex Diaz-Laportilla, is my understanding, began its life as an ethics complaint and investigation by the Miami-Dade County Ethics Commission, who recognized crimes over the course of their investigation and called in the Florida Department of Law Enforcement and Broward County State Attorney's Office, because the Miami-Dade County State Attorney had been conflicted out, and all of these cases are now being handled in Broward County. But you have to remember this. Jose Araujo, who is like the chairman and gets paid a very handsome salary, probably six figures, I'm sure, as an attorney and seasoned county employee. He used to be in the Miami-Dade State Attorney's Office. He was a major duty mucky muck department head. And Jose Araujo signed off time and time again on closeout memos against police officers, some of whom had shot and killed unarmed civilians, okay? Some of whom were fired, in fact, for it, and cleared them. Cleared them. And in fact, during the last 30 years, since the state attorney, Catherine Fernandez-Rundle, has been in office, I think we talk about this every time, but I think it's important to remember she has not charged a single law enforcement officer with an on-duty killing in 30 years. And this man's signature is on most of those, or a lot of those closeout memos clear. So this is the man who is in charge of the Miami-Dade County Ethics Commission, who is supposed to be holding our public officials accountable, who effectively has failed to do so during his decades at the state attorney's office. That's the crazy thing. They abdicated their responsibility. The reason why Miami is so backwards and upside down and notorious for public corruption is because the state attorney has failed to take action, has failed to hold the public sector accountable. And now one of those guys who was responsible for not holding them responsible continues to be responsible for not holding them responsible at the Miami-Dade Ethics Commission.
I think I just want to mention to folks who are, listening to this, they listen from all over the state of Florida. I look at the metrics, you see people from all over the country listening to this. Understand the top elected official in Miami-Dade County is a Democrat. It's a woman named Daniela Levine Cava. And lest you think that Billy is, or even Tomas are partisan hacks, the both of them, if you just look back on their Twitter feed or their public comments, they hold her to account very often. This is not a partisan issue. She's another person who doesn't run with a letter by her name. Probably the reason she was elected, frankly. I don't want to get into that. That's a whole other conversation. Billy, the thing that I was reminded of thinking about Carollo when he was when he was basically threatening you last year, like, oh, he's lucky he's not in Miami. It reminded me of Homer Simpson, trying to buy a gun and the gun owner telling him, oh, you need to wait for a 2-week cooling off period. And Homer's like, oh, you're so lucky I don't have my gun right now. It's literally admitting to the thing that he was going to do. I don't know. Before I want to hand things over to Gerald because he had something he wanted to talk about. But before that, I just want to ask both of you, do you guys feel like this is, I feel like such a fucking noob saying something stupid like this, but could this be, this combined with a few other, hints of accountability that we're seeing, could it be the beginning of some comeuppance, some kind of, era of accountability here, finally in South Florida? I see a lot of shaking. I see Billy nodding his head. Billy, let me start with you first.
Well, yeah, it looked like 4 bobbleheads here.
Yes, yeah.
It looked like Ron DeSantis when he gets out.
Yeah, jiff me now, jiff me. Yeah, begging to be jiffed. We look like the old Marlins bobblehead museum in Marlins Park. That only cost us $3 billion. So, what I will say is, Miami, if you want to understand Miami today, you have to look at Miami from about 1996 to 2001. It's just history repeating. Now, the major difference back then, I would have said a few weeks ago, was there was accountability back then. You know, the white blood cells of the legal justice system attacked the virus and purged it. It took a while, but they did. You had Operation, Green Palm. You had your county commissioner arrested, a city commissioner arrested, a city manager arrested, a former city manager arrested. Then you had another city commissioner arrested. Then finally in 2001, you had Joe Carollo, who the then mayor, arrested for domestic violence. And there was kind of a detente, a peaceful period. It was a little shady, but not as bad, from about 01 to maybe 14, 15, 16, when Francis Suarez was elected to the city commission. Funny enough, but
no relation.
But I guess my point is that, like, I was worried that if all of these folks get away with this, if they're just allowed to term out and move on, and there is no arrests and no accountability and no ethics complaints, and that this will be the end of Miami, meaning that, like, the only people, this will be the end of government as we know it in Miami, because without accountability, the only people that will run for office are criminals. The only people that will run for office are opportunists who want to exploit their public position for private profit. The only people that will run for office are people who go, I have a negative net worth like Francis Suarez did. I know how I can become a millionaire. I'm going to run for office in the city of Miami in a shakedown town and start and become a millionaire.
My dad's connected. Yeah,
right.
Maybe I can pull this off.
But now it seems a domino may have fallen. The question is, did it fall the wrong way, or did it fall against the other dominoes? And I think that I'm hopeful it's the latter. And part of what I think we have to do is not be complacent that they've thrown us a bone here with this arrest of DLP. All they have done is circumcise the tiny wiener off the beast. Like, we have not lopped off a real appendage. That's the thing. Diaz de la Portilla is a symptom. He is not the cancer. He is not. So what we have to do is continue to maintain the pressure, continue to maintain the publicity, the complaints, and basically say we will not stop until the U.S. Attorney in the Southern District of Florida convenes a federal grand jury to pick apart this city. By the way, if they find no crimes, so be it. I'm telling you right now, they are going to find that this is nothing more. The city of Miami is nothing more than a absolute racketeering organization, a continuing criminal enterprise masquerading as a local government, and the victims are the residents and the business owners and the taxpayers of that city, of that criminal organization.
Tomas, you're less convinced of this. You're less convinced that we'll get to that point.
No, I actually align with Billy a lot, but I would go a step further, and I actually have a solution for the voters. I actually do. So, I do want to point out to the listeners, there was a great article in the Miami Herald last week that actually outlines a lot of the past indictments and arrests at the City of Miami Commission that Billy was mentioning about 2 decades ago. So it's true. We've seen this movie before, right? And like Billy also likes to say, in Miami-Dade, in the city of Miami, we don't throw out our garbage, we recycle it, right? So even, and if you read Joan Didion's Miami, like a lot of the same names that you read from the 80s and 90s and even 70s are still the same names. They're just the failed sons and daughters of those fucking failed politicians from back.
I'm sorry to interrupt. The line is, we don't recycle our trash, we re-elect it.
Yeah, we re-elect it. Sorry.
And by the way, Tomas is right. I left out a key factor about that 96 to 01 comparison, and that is it's mostly the same last names.
Yeah, it's the same last names. Yeah.
Carollo, Suarez, Humberto Hernandez is back. Like, you read those news stories and you're like, how is it the same?
How is it still?
So they're
They're
like a malignant tumor. They're like a cancer. They keep popping back up and you have to do chemo. It's maddening. But I will say, like what Billy said, get involved. There's a guy that's running for DLPC that Billy is very enthusiastically supporting, Marvin Tapia, who's a good community member. He would do right by the city, I think. But I will go a step further, Billy. In the late 90s, there was a city referendum at the city of Miami to abolish the city.
1997, yes.
Yeah, 1997. And it failed kind of narrowly. So, and you only need about, I believe, 21,000 petitions to put a referendum to change the city charter. So I would, ask the voters to consider this. And if somebody with money is listening to this, somebody who's connected to campaigns, to donors, we should start a petition campaign to put another referendum to abolish the city of Miami.
I want
Get rid of, fire them all, incorporate it into the county, get rid of it. Real consequences. Real consequences.
It's not abolishing. That's a little bit dramatic, but
I know. Sounds a bit dramatic.
Sounds a bit destructive. I think this is actually a constructive. It's an unincorporation of the city. But what that does, it unencumbers what has become a very large city. You have nearly 500,000 people with only 5 representatives. Only 5 district commissioners, and that is, I believe, in the country, some of the lowest representation per capita.
It doesn't work administratively. I work with every day. I work with with corporations, companies that work in the city of Miami and are trying to get the most basic bids through. They're trying to get permitting through. It's impossible. It's like pushing a fucking rock up the hill. It's
conservatives, less taxes, less corruption, less bureaucracy, less government. Who said we couldn't do bipartisanship? Let's go. Abolish, unincorporate, whatever you want to call it. Let's get rid of the city of Miami.
And by the way, and more freedom in that if you live in Wynwood, if you live in Brickell, if you live in Coconut Grove, if you live in Liberty City, if you live in Shenandoah, you can get together with your friends and neighbors and incorporate your community into a municipality so you can have that local accountability. The truth is, a very, very smart man, George Stearns, who was the attorney, Gene Stearns, who was one of the attorneys who helped with that 1997 referendum to unincorporate the city of Miami, said something. He said, told me something very important. That he said, the spirit of the local municipalities is a good one. It's like more accountable, more localized government. Unfortunately, what happened is in Miami-Dade, they became 34 new opportunities for them to steal from us. And the biggest issue is this. If your municipality is more than 40 or 50,000 people, the government is no longer working for you. You are working for the government. And that's what happened. Miami is 10 times that size. And so but here's the thing, Coconut Grove can't secede from the city of Miami legally and become the village or city of Coconut Grove. The first thing you have to do is unencumber or free Miami,
from that
municipality
Miami that's sitting on top of it.
Exactly.
I like that idea. I love it. And you know what? I'm going to jump in both feet in pushing for this disintegration, disassociation, I think abolition might be a little bit of a tough sell, but I think we can work. We got some wordsmiths here. We can come up with a better name for it. Before we say goodbye, Gerald, you have a call to action for those who want to, who might be interested in supporting laborers who are striking, right?
Yes, as the New York poll of our audience begins to grow, wanted to give people a way that they can plug in. So last night I was in Tapan with the UAW workers who are on strike outside the Stellantis plant, which is a parts manufacturer for Chrysler. I believe it's a 24/7 rolling strike. So whenever you show up is a good time. Any food, Gatorade, water, what have you is appreciated. I know there will be a big push. It's Friday today. There'll be a large push on Saturday. Last weekend, we had Dr. Cornel West come up to give his support. We've had other political actors and candidates as well, but wanted to ask if any people in the tri-state area can make the time to come to Tapan and support their UAW workers to help win, a just contract. Please be there. I'll be there, weather permitting, on Saturday. I know there's, like I said, a big push for a big turnout. But they said they're going to keep going until they win. So
I heard there's a Democratic senator who's from the area who's going to send a couple bars of gold. So that should help out.
Listen, that can fund a lot of pizza, a lot of Gatorade, a lot of water, a lot of ponchos and umbrellas. So
if you're around, help out in Tapan. One thing I wanted to mention really quickly before we say goodbye is that a year ago we started this show. We were producing our first slate of episodes. Nobody had heard of us. We had 0 listeners. We did what you do when you start a show from zero. We reached out to several prominent creators in the medium to be guests. Most of them didn't get back to us, but one who did was Matt Christman of Chapo Trap House. Matt's a big deal. He was a huge get for us, and he could have very easily just ignored our invitation. Instead, we had a great conversation about Florida. You can listen to it. It's episode 3, I believe, or episode 2, framing the whole episode, the whole premise for us, for what this show turned out to be. We were informed by his sharp mind, his deep knowledge of U.S. history, the freaks and mutants that built this state. And to this date, that episode remains one of our most streamed. Matt is a luminary, one of the smartest minds out there, and a hilarious, affable guy. And you might have heard that Matt is currently struggling after a medical emergency. And I just wanted to say that we're thinking about him over here at Why Are We Like This, and we're wishing him a speedy recovery. Super grateful to have him help us get established all of those episodes ago. Get well soon, Kush Bomb.
Yeah.
Wait, I'm sorry. We can ignore your invitations? I didn't even know that was an option.
I have to remember that. Tomas can get very pushy in text. So thank you again to Billy Corbin. You can follow him
Our
on
soon-to-be
X.
fourth-time guest.
Our soon-to-be fourth-time guest.
By the way, the next time I come on, I'm going to do it from New York. So
Oh, God. We're fully outnumbered.
He'll be the odd man out.
That's right. That's right.
You can follow Billy on X or Twitter at Billy Corbin. You should also subscribe to Because Miami, which appears on the Libertard and Friends podcast feed every Friday. Billy, thanks for joining us again.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you, guys.